This is not meat, it's better. So, we're making a rich and creamy vegetarian pasta sauce with tofu, using some Bolognese flavors and techniques. Like all my tofu recipes, I want to show you how to get your tofu ready for cooking straight from the packaging. Let's do it. First up, you want to remove the brining liquid. They're there to keep the tofu moist during storage. Simply drain. Next up, you want to remove as much excess moisture inside the tofu as possible for two reasons. One, to make caramelization and browning easier during the cooking process. Two, and more importantly, to get rid of that raw soybean taste that most people who dislike tofu associate with tofu. And this is something I would do even if I were to serve it raw and cold. So there are 3 ways to do this. 2 minutes in the microwave, 10 minutes in a steamer, 5 minutes simmered in salted water. There's also a 5th way, which involves heavy objects on top for a prolonged period of time, so we can all agree that we skip that one. But however you want to do it, to make life easier, we crumble the tofu. For this recipe, it's important to use either firm or extra-firm tofu so that they can withstand the sauteing, the browning, which is what's going to develop flavors later. So today, microwave, 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, we drain off the excess moisture. This is a bit hot now, by the way, so be careful. I just want to show you, even for 600 grams of firm tofu, that's the amount of liquid that came out. And if you're using a softer variation of tofu, it would double or triple that. So now, let's cook some mince. Now, while this can be a one-pot dish, if you're cooking this for the first time, I highly recommend that you use a non-stick skillet for the mince part, just to make life easier for yourself. Once you've done it a few times, you can make it one pot. So, stove on, high smoke point neutral oil. In this case, refined olive oil. Tofu goes in. And we break them apart just like minced meat. What we want to achieve here is we further evaporate the water content within the tofu, concentrating its flavors. Then we'll start to brown them and build deeper, stronger flavors. And that's why we're using firm tofu for this, because you don't want this to become a puree before they can get some color. While tofu is cooking away, we prepare our aromatic vegetables. Some carrots, which would bring the sweetness to the sauce. By the way, if you're cooking this as a weekday meal, use a food processor. It would save you so much time. Some celery. Today we're being spoiled. We're using the heart of the celery, leaves included. They bring a ton of flavors. Onion, which once again brings some sweetness and some complexity to the dish. In general, I like to keep the ratio 2 to 1 to 1, the 2 being the carrot, adding sweetness and depth to the dish. And I like to keep the ratio between aromatic vegetables to tofu to almost 1 to 1, factoring in this would shrink dramatically, while tofu, unlike a real mince, does not shrink much. So now, as you can see, our tofu has taken on some color, but not the kind of golden brown color you would normally associate with something like a piece of steak. Why is that? Well, even though tofu is extremely high in protein, sometimes higher than certain cuts of meat, there are 2 things that they're lacking to properly brown, to cause the Maillard reaction, which is what makes meat taste meaty. 1, it lacks fat, which we've already solved by adding quite a generous amount of oil to begin with. 2, it lacks sugar. While a piece of steak does not taste sweet, it contains enough natural sugar to cause the Maillard reaction, which takes 2 to dance: protein / amino acid and sugar. So to really develop flavor, we need the Maillard reaction. We need some form of sugar. Of course, the lazy way is just to add a bit of sugar, and that works. But to take it to the next level, we're gonna use some soy sauce, which, just like a piece of steak, has enough natural sugar, just like an activist, to unlock its values. So here we have a squirt bottle, and we're simply going to add bit by bit. This is light soy sauce, by the way. The reason why we use soy sauce is that we're hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. A, it satisfies the sugar requirement. B, soy sauce is extremely rich in umami, and that would add a ton of savoriness to our sauce. And this is also our source of salinity, and that's why we haven't salted anything yet. Once we have the desired caramelization and we've cooked the sofrito, we'll taste and adjust. Today we're keeping it simple for the purpose of demonstration. If you want to go the extra mile, mince some dried mushrooms, especially dry shiitake. That would give even more umami and more contrasting texture. And you can use the soaking liquid as the umami-rich cooking dashi for this recipe. Now it looks like chicken. Let's take it to beef. So after about 15 minutes in total, this is the color you want to see. Now it sounds like a lot of work, but the beauty is, unlike a meat mince, tofu is by definition cooked, tender, and ready to go. So this on itself is already a wonderful, wonderful dish, especially with some lettuce wrap. But now, let's turn this into a beautiful sauce. So we sweat some vegetables. Once again, some olive oil in the pan. Vegetables in. And we cook them without color. What we want to achieve at this point is to evaporate their water content, to concentrate their flavors, especially the sweetness from the carrot and the onion. And we're not salting yet, because remember, this has a lot of soy sauce. And through evaporation, this almost 1-to-1 ratio will become 2-to-1 in about 8 minutes. And the recipe, just a guidance. Follow this once, understand the principles, taste along the way to see what each ingredient brings. Then make it your own. Add more carrot if you want it sweeter. Add some spices, add different herbs. The world is your oyster. Once the aromatic vegetables are translucent, I like to add a bit of garlic. And the reason why we add the garlic now is because of its high sugar content. If we added them with the aromatic vegetables, they'll burn before the others could properly sweat. And with garlic, the earlier you add them, the more sweetness it imparts. The later you add them, the more garlicky it becomes. So once again, try this once and decide for yourself. Now, once the garlic is fragrant, meaning you could smell a ton of garlicky goodness, our mince goes in. Now, we continue to build flavors. First up, with our umami bomb, the tomato puree. And it's important to cook out your tomato puree to remove its harshness and to concentrate its flavor. Next up, we add some tinned tomatoes. Once again, this will add a ton of umami, bit of sweetness, and just the right amount of acidity to balance everything. So 1 can for 600 grams of tofu. Now, we taste. Oh, it's incredible. And we adjust the seasoning. In this case, it's already perfect, but it's a personal choice now what you want to add. Fish sauce would work great to add umami. Worcester sauce, incredible depth. Salt, pepper, soy sauce, it's up to you. And now we add our cooking liquid. You can use a vegetable stock, you can use a dashi. For me, even water is sufficient. I'm omitting 2 things I normally always add to my bolognese. Number 1, bay leaves, and number 2, wine. Out of consideration for the much shorter cooking time required. For bay leaves, you need at least 30 minutes for it to impart meaningful flavors. For wine, it takes at least 8 minutes to evaporate just the alcohol, to reduce it to the desired consistency. So, what we're solving here, since the tofu is already at perfect texture, we're waiting for the flavors to fully emulsify, for the aromatic vegetables to fully soften and form this wonderful, wonderful creamy sauce. So this should not take more than 20 minutes, making up for the time required to stir fry the tofu earlier. Lid on, and we'll cook some pasta in 20 minutes. I'll see you then. After 20 minutes, this is what we have. Just look at that. Now, you taste for the doneness of the vegetables. Perfect. Now let's cook some pasta. So, we've solved the caramelization, the Maillard reaction. One thing that still lacks compared to a traditional ragu bolognese is the creaminess, normally a result of collagen and connective tissues from the meat, breaking down into gelatin. Of course, one solution would be just to add some gelatin, but I'll propose something even easier. We are going to use the starch from the surface of our pasta, dry pasta that is, to thicken the whole sauce, making the whole dish creamy in the process. It is how I like to cook most of my pastas. So if you've never tried this, please give it a go. So 1 very generous ladle of our sauce goes in, along with a bit of the liquid. Now, pasta straight in. And we're gonna cook them together with the sauce, moving them just like how you would a risotto. So the starch on the surface of the pasta would be released into the sauce. And to do this, we need some boiling water, straight in. Now, just like a risotto, what I like to do is I check the packaging. If it says 12 minutes, it's safe to walk away and leave it to simmer for the first half of the cooking time. For the second half, you really need to come back to moderate. In our case, we can give it 5 minutes. Now, we really mother it. And you keep topping this up with boiling water so that they're mostly submerged. By the way, I've often said on the channel, tofu was never intended to be a meat substitute. And we're not doing this to mimic meat. We're doing this because it's extremely tasty. So if you're not a vegetarian, use the recipe as a guideline. Add some mince, add some fish, add some prawns. It'll be incredibly tasty. Oh, and canned tuna would work tremendously. Now, taste once again. For doneness this time. Once this is close to al dente, we stop adding the liquid and we reduce it. Just look at the texture of the sauce already. No gelatin, no meat. That's all from the starch. And you can apply this technique to any pasta you make. Finishing touch, tiny bit of parsley, brightness, color. Basil would work really well with this as well. Just to show you the consistency you want. When you draw a canal in the middle with your spatula, it should take a while for the liquid to come back. Perfection, stove off, bit of black pepper at the end. If you want to use some Parmesan cheese, wonderful. Parsley in, and we can plate. Oh, just look at that, how beautiful is that? Tiny bit of parsley for garnish. And that's it. Meaty without meat. Creamy without cream. This is my tofu bolognese.